From the early UFCs to modern-day PFL, tournaments have been a part of MMA since its inception, playing host to some of the sport's biggest fights and kickstarting the careers of several of its icons. Today, we look at some of the greatest tournaments to take place over the past 30 years, based on a combination of star power, match quality, and historic importance to the sport. Welcome to the INC, and these are 5 of MMA's greatest tournaments. Number 5. Ring's King of Kings, 1999. First formed in 1991 as a shoot-style pro wrestling league, Fighting Network Rings had transitioned to become one of Japan's most star-studded MMA promotions by 1999, leading to company founder Akira Maeda creating an event to showcase as much of his roster as possible. The result was King of Kings, an ambitious 32-man Grand Prix boasting some of the biggest stars of Japan and overseas, including Minotauro Nogueira, Maurice Smith, and a 19-year-old Alistair Overeem prior to discovering horse meat. The tournament was divided into 2 blocks, with the first and second rounds of each taking place in one night, followed by the final 3 months later. The early rounds of the tournament were dominated by grapplers, with Nogueira and Renzo Gracie winning their opening 2 matches with a little over 3 minutes. For Russian veteran Andrei Kopylov, the run would be even quicker. With the physical toll that comes with such a format, it's no surprise that a man with first-hand experience would come out on top. Dan "Hendo" Henderson had proven to be a master of tournament MMA, having claimed victory at UFC 17 and the 1997 Brazil Open, with his wrestling-centric style allowing him to dominate opponents without taking too much damage. After making comfortable work of his first 2 fights, Hendo bested MMA bad boy Gilbert Yvel before a controversial decision over Minotauro Nogueira, where the American was given the judge's nod, despite Nogueira threatening several submissions throughout the bout. In the final, Henderson took on future Strikeforce champion Renato Babalu Sobral. After the controversy of his previous fight, Hendo made the final match much more decisive, neutralizing his opponent's jiu-jitsu game while showing flashes of the punching power that made him famous. Henderson was given the judge's nod and immediate status as one of the sport's biggest talents, even if 4 decisions in his past 5 did little to quell his perception as a boring fighter. Rings would hold a further tournament the following year, but for its scale and top level of talent, it's the 1999 incarnation that earns a spot on this list. It could be argued that the 2000 tournament suffered without Henderson, who by this point had transitioned to Pride and taken steps to halt his Decision Dan moniker. Number 4. The Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. The Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix was intended to revive the fortunes of an MMA legend. Instead, it kick-started the career of another. By 2011, the company boasted a heavyweight roster many believed could surpass the UFC's, leading to company president Scott Coker announcing an 8-man tournament to showcase the biggest of his stars. The event had been built around Fedor Emelianenko. The last emperor entered the promotion amid much fanfare in 2009, but had seen his aura take a hit after an upset loss to Fabricio Verdum. Despite this, Fedor entered the tournament as the bookmaker's favorite, and should he surpass his first-round opponent, face the prospect of a big-money rematch with Verdum or a dream bout with company champion Alistair Overeem. Damn, Overeem really loved tournaments, didn't he? The plans, however, quickly fell apart. Fedor further showed his advancing years in a ground-and-pound loss to Bigfoot Silva, while Overeem bested fellow legend Verdum in what many consider one of the worst fights in Strikeforce history, after which Overeem was withdrawn from the contest following a contract dispute between the promotion and the fighter's management company Golden Glory. Strikeforce needed a white knight to revive interest in the failing contest, and it came from an unlikely and rotund source. Daniel Cormier had transitioned to MMA following an acclaimed wrestling career, and quickly adapted to his new surroundings by winning his first 8 fights, including a decision over UFC title challenger and free intercourse enthusiast Jeff Monson. After Overeem's withdrawal, Cormier was drafted in on just 2 weeks' notice to face Bigfoot Silva in the semi-final. Despite a huge size and experience deficit, Cormier was undaunted by his opponent, perplexing the Giant with his deceptive speed and even dropping him early in the first. A second knockdown a few minutes later proved too much for his opponent.
A minute 11 left in the first. The jab from Corbin. Uppercut. Down goes Silva.
Having been a complete unknown just a few months earlier, DC had become the feel-good story of the contest, with former UFC champion Josh Barnett separating him from a fairy tale victory. Louisiana's finest rose to the occasion, putting on a grappling clinic to out-wrestle Barnett on his way to a 5-round decision, claiming the company's crown and the first jewel in a Hall of Fame career. Scott Coker would revisit the tournament format several times over the coming years, including another Fedor-fronted Grand Prix during his time in Bellator. But as with Rings 99, his original flash of inspiration could never be repeated. Number 3. The King of Pancrase Tournament. Pancrase was a promotion that predated even the UFC, so it's no surprise that they'd be part of one of the most influential contests in MMA history. Founded by pro wrestlers Minoru Suzuki and Masakatsu Funaki, Pancrase was the first promotion to establish mixed martial arts as a marketable prospect in Japan. After their early events proved successful, the company capitalized by hosting a 16-man tournament to crown their first open-weight champion. With a mix of pro wrestlers, shoot fighters, and champion kickboxers, the contest talent level was well ahead of that seen in the UFC at the time. Something evidenced in the opening round when Bas Rutten suffered an upset loss to MMA newcomer Frank Shamrock, one of the sport's most shocking outcomes up until that point. The event would prove an important one for Shamrock as it marked his first meeting with future UFC champion Maurice Smith. The two would later become training partners and, along with kickboxer Javier Mendez, would form the American Kickboxing Academy, widely considered one of the most dominant and influential MMA gyms of all time. After Frank was eliminated from the contest, it was up to older brother Ken to maintain family pride. The UFC veteran made his way to the semi-final, where he faced his mentor Masakatsu Funaki. The pupil would surpass the master, as a predictably explosive grappling exchange led to Shamrock finishing the veteran 6 minutes into the opening round, setting the stage for a match against the man who bested his brother a day earlier, karate black belt Manabu Yamada. Yamada caused his own major upset by submitting Minoru Suzuki in the semi-final, with many now favoring the unknown Japanese fighter to overcome his American opponent. Shamrock, however, would avoid the banana skin, surviving all of Yamada's submission attempts on his way to a unanimous decision. The baddest man on the planet wasn't just a moniker, it was a statement of fact. While quaint by modern MMA standards, the tournament's pioneer status, along with birthing one of the sport's greatest super teams, earns it its place on our list. Number 2. The Pride 2003 Middleweight Grand Prix. It might not be the largest tournament on our list, but the Pride 2003 Middleweight Grand Prix may be the biggest example of quality over quantity. The tournament came at a turbulent time for Pride. The company was in the midst of a high-profile feud against the UFC, leading to Dana White sending Chuck Liddell to Japan with the aim of dethroning middleweight champion Vanderlei Silva. Liddell and Silva formed just one part of a stacked contendership, including Alistair Overeem, Quentin Rampage Jackson, and Kazushi Sakuraba. White even went as far as to place a bet on the tournament against Pride president Nobuyuki Sakakibara. Knowing where Sakakibara was getting his cash from, that might not have been the best idea. Both Silva and Liddell won their opening bouts at Pride Total Elimination. Liddell survived an early scare to dispose of Overeem, while Pride made the bizarre decision to book Silva against Sakuraba, despite the axe murderer claiming 2 one-sided wins over the MMA legend. Their third outing would prove even more ominous.
But these knockouts! And there it is! And there it is! And there it is!
Silva bested another grappling ace in Olympic gold medalist Hidehiko Yoshida, and all roads pointed to the anticipated dream match between himself and Liddell in the final, only for the Iceman to suffer an upset loss to Rampage Jackson. Rampage overwhelmed Liddell with constant overhands before thawing the Iceman midway through the second round, much to the horror of an onlooking Dana White on commentary.
We didn't implement the game plan, and as a result.
Rampage would take Liddell's spot in the final against Silva a few hours later. After successfully stopping an early slam attempt, Silva turned in one of the most violent performances of his career, hammering his opponent with an endless barrage of Thai knees to the head until Jackson's chin finally cracked. Silva further cementing his legend, and Dana White losing thousands of dollars. What's not to love? The Grand Prix's legacy would be revisited several times in the years after. Silva and Jackson would lock horns again at Pride 28 before Jackson vindicated his win over Liddell upon arriving in the UFC. White, meanwhile, would finally get his Silva vs. Liddell bout at UFC 79, with the Iceman winning the long-awaited contest by unanimous decision. Number 1. The Pride 2005 Middleweight Grand Prix. It was always going to be hard for Pride to surpass its acclaimed 2003 middleweight tournament, but its mix of all-action fights and star-making performances managed to achieve just that. The tournament saw the field expanded from 8 men to 16, with the likes of Sakuraba, Rampage, and Overeem joining high-profile veterans including Kevin Randleman, Igor Vovchanchin, and Vitor Belfort. The star of the show was again expected to be Vanderlei Silva. The Brazilian carried the momentum from his last Grand Prix win into becoming one of the most dominant forces in the sport, and after besting Kazuhiro Nakamura and Hidehiko Yoshida in a rematch, there was little sign things were about to change. That was until Pride Final Conflict 2005, when Silva took on fellow Brazilian Ricardo Arona in the semi-final. Arona neutralized Silva's flurries with constant takedowns, going on to claim a unanimous decision and Silva's first middleweight loss in company history. The Silva loss, however, would be a mask on the competition's real story. Mauricio Shogun Rua entered the tournament as a comparative unknown, having just 9 fights to his name by the time he faced Rampage Jackson in the opening round. The shoot-a-box protege, however, would be a revelation, dominating Rampage with knees and soccer kicks before further wins over Overeem and Rogerio Nogueira, the latter widely considered one of the company's greatest ever fights. Shogun eventually faced off against Arona in the final, looking to avenge his training partner's loss hours earlier. Arona attempted to nullify Shogun's striking threat with an extended body lock, and when that failed, he took a page out of the Fabricio Verdum playbook of guard baiting, a tactic that unintentionally placed his head squarely in Shogun's stomping range.
Look at this, it's over! It's over! Unbelievable!
While already a classic in terms of match quality and star power, the 2005 Grand Prix earns its spot on this list for cementing Shogun as one of the best light heavyweights of all time. If you want your definitive MMA tournament, this might just be it. And now, time for a few honorable mentions. Mirko Cro Cop has been no stranger to classic MMA tournaments, winning the 2006 Pride Openweight Grand Prix before repeating the trick in Rizin a decade later. UFC 3 introduced the world to Harold Howard. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not.
We have a saying back home that if you're coming on, come on.
The Dream Super Hulk Grand Prix, because any event involving Bob Sapp and Jose Canseco is just too good to miss. This is the INC. Please like, share, and subscribe. Post your feedback in the comments and donate to our Patreon page for hours of exclusive content.